Today on the Blockchain Report, Bitcoin is back above 117K and October is already shaping up to be its favorite month. As Changpeng Zhao is calling it Uptober because nothing says spooky season like pumpkins and price pumps. Michael Saylor is back with a $1 trillion Bitcoin endgame because apparently yachts and laser eyes just weren't ambitious enough. And Steak and Shake sees sales surge 15% after adding Bitcoin payments, proving that burgers taste just a little bit better when you buy them with hard money. All that and more right now in today's show. Let's go! Good morning and welcome back, my crypto crusaders, to another episode of the Blockchain Report. I'm Hank Hudson coming to you live from San Francisco, California. It is Wednesday, that weird middle child of the week, halfway to the weekend, but your portfolio, well, still grounded and not allowed to have friends over. Now today's show is going to look just a little bit different than normal. Our beloved producer Victor is homesick. We miss you, Victor. So things are slightly stripped down today, but don't worry. We're still bringing every ounce of heat you've come to expect, just with a little less background wizardry and a little more raw chaos. Now, before we cannonball into today's mess of ETFs, lawsuits, and billionaires role-playing as stand-up comics and social media, let's take a second for some financial mindfulness, shall we? Close your eyes and picture yourself buying Bitcoin at $100 and never selling. Now take that imaginary yacht ride, wave to your haters out on the dock, and smash that like button like it's a money printer stuck on turbo. And while you're at it, follow RoxomTV and me and Hank at RoxomTV, because if you're still getting investment advice from TikTok choreographers, well, you deserve every rug pull that's headed your way. All right, stripped down or not, let's see who's soaring, who's sinking, and who's chasing alpha like sunsets in this morning's market rundown. Let's go. All right, sweet hallelujah Wednesday. Things are looking pretty good. Satoshi, or the ghost of Satoshi, has been very kind to us this morning, and the price of Bitcoin clearly reflects that. We see right now we are over 117K yet again. Just 24 hours ago, we were hovering beneath 113K, but the gods of crypto are blowing the tailwinds in our favor this morning, and the market is certainly reflecting that. Bitcoin's up big. In the last 24 hours, you've been as high as 117.3, so things are certainly looking on the upswing this morning. So get your rocket boosters ready, fam. We got a lot to cover in today's show, but first, we're going to go to a quick break. But when we're back, we're going to start with this morning's bull run. All that and more coming up right now in the Blockchain Report after this.
Security matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
All right, welcome back. It's time to start this morning's bull run, and we got a lot to chat about, so let's get on into it. First up, global payments giant Stripe has decided that launching your own stablecoin should be as easy as copy-pasting a TikTok caption. They've unveiled something called Open Issuance, a tool that supposedly lets any business mint and burn their own stablecoins with just a few lines of code. So yeah, your local coffee shop could now crank out pumpkin spice coin by the weekend. Great. The whole thing is powered by Bridge, a stablecoin infrastructure company Stripe bought last year for $1.1 billion. The money backing these Franken coins will be managed by the world's most boring but powerful names. Of course, we're talking BlackRock, Fidelity, and Superstate. Because nothing screams crypto innovation quite like outsourcing your reserves to the same firms that manage your grandma's retirement account. This is all happening under Trump's crypto-friendly administration, which pushed the Genius Act into law back in July. Now, that law gave stablecoins a regulatory blessing, and the market has ballooned to $300 billion with projections to hit $2 trillion by 2028. Stripe is even seeking a federal banking charter and a New York trust license so regulators don't come knocking. And here's the kicker. They say businesses can launch a stablecoin in a matter of days, slap rewards on top of it, and call it a customer loyalty program. It's a crypto as a service, which is apparently the new thing that everyone's doing. Binance already rolled out a white label crypto product for banks earlier this week, and Coinbase launched its version back in June. So now the big players are basically renting out the plumbing of crypto to anyone with a corporate logo and a marketing budget. And because it wouldn't be a Stripe launch without AI sprinkled on top of it, they also announced an agentic commerce protocol with OpenAI. That's right. AI agents will now be selling you socks while running on stablecoin rails. Some Coinbase developers even predicted that Ethereum's biggest future power user will be AI agents. So picture this, robots buying sneakers from robots, paying in stablecoins while humans just watch Bitcoin eating all of this from the top of the food chain. That's a future I can get behind. And in other news, Brian Quintez, A16Z's policy guy and former CFTC commissioner, will not be the next sheriff of crypto. His nomination to the chair of the Commodity Futures Trading Commission has officially been tossed into the recycling bin by the Trump White House. Now, this is after months of delays, canceled committee votes, and political ping pong that made it look like Congress was allergic to making decisions. Heard that one before. Now, at first, the holdup was blamed on conflicts of interest raised by none other than Tyler and Cameron Winklevoss. Yes, the Winklevi, crypto's most identical power brokers, apparently lobbied against him, worried about how his ties to A16Z might affect Gemini's standing. Quintez did not take that very well. He even went full receipts mode last month, posting private text with the twins where they allegedly pressured him for cultural reform and a friendlier stance toward Gemini's legal troubles. He basically accused them of whispering in Trump's ear to sink his nomination. Meanwhile, the CFTC has been running on autopilot for almost a year now, led only by acting chair Carolyn Pham, who said she'd leave once a real chair was nominated. Now, it's back to the drawing board, though, as the leading replacement is reportedly Mike Seelig, chief counsel to the SEC's crypto task force. Other names in the mix include Milbank partner Josh Sterling, Baker and Hostetler's Isabel Corbett Sterling, and former Commissioner Jill Sommers. Now, why does all of this matter, you ask? Well, because the CFTC could end up as the main cop on the crypto beat under the Digital Asset Market Clarity Act moving through Congress. That bill would hand them over the digital commodities, which includes Bitcoin and possibly Ether if it keeps passing the sufficiently decentralized sniff test. So who runs the CFTC isn't just DC drama, it could shape the regulatory path for Bitcoin's future. And the fact that even pro-crypto candidates are getting chewed up in the political crossfire, that tells you the industry's influence in Washington is both massive and messy. All right, we're taking a quick break, but when we're back, we're going to be joined for our bull run today by none other than Fernando, the Bitcoin libertarian himself. So stay tuned, more bull run and top news coming up right after this message on the Blockchain Report. All right, welcome back. It's time for more of our bull run this morning, but we're joined by one of our favorite guests of the program, Fernando, the Bitcoin libertarian. Fernando, how are you? It's been a minute since we've seen you, my friend.
Yeah, long time no see. Just I think before the last time was before the Hong Kong conference, and I was supposed to go live on 17, but there was the unconference, the Bitcoin Treasury Company unconference, and finally I'm here. I'm so glad to be talking with you again.
Oh, we're so happy to have you back, Fernando, and we got a lot to talk about today. But really quick, what's new in your world? I know you're on the other side of the globe, all the way over in Hong Kong. What's new? What's the temperature like over there? How are things feeling on the Bitcoin front on the other side of the world?
Well, here we had the Bitcoin conference. I was glad to meet the people from Roxom that came here. We've been enjoying an amazing night at the Roxom party. I already knew Elena and Olivia, but I met more people from Roxom. Don't remember the name of the guy who is running the previous show. I don't remember the name. Nolan, yes, Nolan. I'm so bad for name. I met Nolan. I've been speaking with him a lot. So amazing. And from this side of the world, the temperature, summer doesn't want to leave. We are super today. Today is holiday in Hong Kong because it's the National Day of China, and it was super hot all day. Last week we've been hit by a huge typhoon. Nothing happened, nothing serious happened, but we had 2 days with strong shower, rain and wind. We didn't go to the office, but everything is okay.
All right, well, we're glad that you're safe from the typhoon because we got a lot of news today to talk about, and I want to get your thoughts on it. So hang 10 there, Fernando. We're going to bring you back in just a second because first, I want to talk about BlackRock, of course, the planet's largest asset manager. They now own over 3.8% of the entire Bitcoin supply. That's nearly 768,000 Bitcoin sitting inside its iShares Bitcoin Trust ETF, better known, of course, as IBIT. Bloomberg analyst Eric Balkunas called it extraordinary. And let's be real, he's right. In ETF terms, this is warp speed growth. IBIT launched last year and has already hauled in $87.7 billion in assets. Now, for context, the SPY ETF, the gold standard of stock ETFs, has been around for 32 years and only controls about 1.1% of the S&P 500's market cap. BlackRock has already tripled that impact on Bitcoin in less than 2 years. The fund pulled in $7.8 billion of inflows just in Q3 alone. That's part of $21.5 billion flowing into Bitcoin ETFs from the year to date. The result? BlackRock is now second only to Satoshi Nakamoto himself in total Bitcoin holdings. Nakamoto is estimated to have around 1.12 million Bitcoin. At this pace, though, BlackRock could leapfrog the mysterious creator as early as next summer. And if Bitcoin hits 150K, which analysts think could spark a feeding frenzy of ETF buying, that timeline could speed up even more. This isn't just about one firm, though. If BlackRock proves Bitcoin ETFs are a license to print money, Vanguard and every other asset manager will also want in, which means a tidal wave of institutional demand is underway. And if you're still wondering what drives Bitcoin's price higher, it's this: Wall Street giants competing with each other to hoard more of the finite 21 million supply. All right, we're bringing Fernando back. Fernando, BlackRock now holds more Bitcoin than almost everyone alive except Satoshi. From your perspective, is this validation for Bitcoin or just Wall Street finally learning how to monopolize scarcity? What do you think?
Of course, I think that since the ETF was approved, it's a way to show the world that finally Wall Street are taking Bitcoin seriously. We had around 15 years to front run them, but now they know what is Bitcoin, they know the scarcity. And as you mentioned, the comparison between the speed of growing of the Bitcoin ETF and the gold ETF, it shows that Bitcoin is much, much better than gold as an asset. And again, most of Maxis say that the ETFs are not good for Bitcoin. They don't respect the Satoshi Nakamoto ethos that still is the person or the group of persons that have the biggest amount of Bitcoin in this world. But at the end of the day, what I always say, this ETF, the treasury companies, they help other people to be exposed to Bitcoin, people that never had bought Bitcoin if not by the ETF, because they don't want to do the self-custody, they don't want to hold their own keys, so they put this responsibility into BlackRock, and they are exposed to Bitcoin. For me, it's positive, and it shows the trend. It shows that we never been wrong. Bitcoin is winning, and of course, a lot of new ETFs are going to be adding to BlackRock. You have Vanguard this week that they approve Bitcoin again. We have here in Hong Kong some Bitcoin ETF. I think that this is good for the ecosystem.
Yeah, I do too. You know, I know some people would argue that it does kind of go against the cypherpunk libertarian ideals of self-sovereignty, but if we ever expected Bitcoin to truly be the new sun of the financial planetary system, this was always going to happen eventually. And I'm kind of at the point where anything that brings Bitcoin further into the limelight, I'm here for, because we need to continue orange pilling the world. And BlackRock being involved does help, whether you like it or not. All right, so Fernando, BlackRock also could surpass Satoshi's Bitcoin stash of 1.12 million Bitcoin by next summer. What do you think that does to the narrative around who really controls Bitcoin? Are people going to get worried here? Does BlackRock own too much right now? Because we kind of mentioned that earlier. It kind of goes against the ethos of Bitcoin. Are we reaching that point, or is like less than 4% pretty negligible?
Well, what we need to understand is, first of all, how the ETFs work. It's not that it's being controlled by BlackRock. It's the clients of BlackRock buying the ETF, and BlackRock buying the Bitcoin. So technically, BlackRock is not controlling this big amount of Bitcoin. On the other side, of course, it's not good that one actor controls a huge amount of Bitcoin. But if we respect the Bitcoin ethos, Bitcoin is permissionless. So we cannot say to BlackRock, don't buy any more Bitcoin. And on the other side, I think that boosts the adoption. As I say to everyone, if you buy IBIT, you don't have Bitcoin. It's not real Bitcoin, but you have exposure to Bitcoin. In my opinion, I would never buy a Bitcoin ETF because for me, it doesn't have any advantage to buy the Bitcoin and control my own keys. But 3 months ago, the father of one of my friends was traveling around Hong Kong, and he wanted to start asking about Bitcoin and all this stuff. And he saw all the process of buying, holding your own keys, set up a wallet, very difficult. So I said, okay, you can buy an ETF. You can buy IBIT, and you have exposure to Bitcoin, even though it's not the real Bitcoin. So he bought IBIT. And he's complaining now that Bitcoin is not going up, but this is another topic.
Yeah, absolutely. And Fernando, if giants like BlackRock, and let's say Vanguard gets involved a little more, keep scooping up this Bitcoin supply, do you think it forces retail to consider self-custodying faster? Because like you said, holding an ETF isn't the same as natively holding Bitcoin. Or, do you think people are just going to keep piling into these ETFs because it's kind of an on-ramp for a lot of people that aren't interested in self-custodying at this time?
Yes, I think that, people, now we enter in a phase, we are still early, but in Bitcoin adoption, we are entering in a phase that not all the people to come to Bitcoin are going to be crazy maxis like me, that we are crazy with Bitcoin. We are every day talking about Bitcoin. We run nodes. We are advocates of self-custody. We use Nostr, and we say that anything not Bitcoin is a scam. So the people that is coming now, they see Bitcoin as an investment. So for them, probably they are not gonna be willing to do the homework of the self-custody, even though you said this is not your Bitcoin, and there's going to be coming more and more and more money to these institutions that probably they have more confidence. They trust more on them than having their own keys, because probably they are boomers or I don't know. And I think that, again, all this flow of money that is coming to the ETF indirectly benefits us, benefits the people who have their own keys, because price is going up, Bitcoin is becoming more scarce, and I don't want to say price, but the purchase power of Bitcoin is becoming higher. So that's what I think. I'm not 100%. I'm not against the ETFs. I would never buy a Bitcoin ETF. But I suggest to people who don't want to do the self-custody, instead of buying Bitcoin and putting on an exchange, better to buy ETF.
Yeah, no, I think it's an important tool, right? Like you have people like my boomer parents who there's no way they are going to touch self-custodying. Especially because right now with Bitcoin surging back almost near a 120K again, the stakes for self-custodying have never been higher than they are right now. It's like carrying around a small bag that has $100,000 in it. So that's a lot to handle for, most people right now, I'd say. So having other people custody that for you while getting some of that exposure through an ETF seems like kind of the natural progression right now. And as self-custodying and the user interface inevitably becomes easier, I think we're going to see a lot of those people that are in the ETF land eventually natively buy Bitcoin for themselves as well. We're just not quite there yet with everyone, but that's okay. One ETF at a time. All right, hang tight here, Fernando. We're going to go over this next story, and I'm going to bring you back because right now, Binance founder Changpeng Zhao, better known as CZ, is trying to trademark optimism. After Bitcoin closed September with a nearly 5% gain, he hinted that October might deliver yet another Uptober. Yes, the month of pumpkin spice and regrettable Halloween costumes is also Bitcoin's second best performer historically. And according to CoinGlass, October averages a 21.89% gain. All right. It's closed green 6 years in a row and 5 of those with double-digit returns. Now, CZ reminded everyone of Bitcoin's monster run from 2015 through October of 2017, when it jumped from $228 to over $4,300. That's a tidy little 19x move. Back then, though, volume surged, interest spiked, and October of 2017 became one of Bitcoin's most famous rallies. This year, Bitcoin's already notched a positive September, setting up for that statistical continuation. Now, CZ was careful to add that he's not predicting the future because apparently you can get sued for optimism these days, but rather he's pointing to the data. And the data says October is Bitcoin's playground. Analysts are also pointing to some timely catalysts. A potential Fed rate cut could give Bitcoin an extra boost. So could progress on the Clarity Act, which might remove some of the legal fog suffocating U.S. crypto firms. On top of that, Bitcoin is positively correlated with gold at this moment, and gold's been glimmering like never before. And add it all up, and October could turn into the kind of month Bitcoiners call legendary and skeptics call an annoying reminder that they didn't buy in September. We're bringing Fernando back. Fernando, Bitcoin has historically crushed it in October. Do you think these seasonal patterns actually matter anymore, or are we all just cosplaying as astrologers with candlesticks at this point? Do they matter? What do you think?
Well, usually September is not a good month because it's the end of summer for America and the start of the schools and all the things. Similar what in Argentina happens in March. That is the month that when we start really the year. I'm a bull, so I think that Bitcoin is gonna go up forever. So probably the history said I like to watch the long term, and instead of watching month by month, Bitcoin is gonna go up forever. Bitcoin someday is gonna reach $1 million US. I don't know when. It's like no financial advice, but sooner or later it will happen. But usually story shows that October is a good month, and usually if September is a green month, October is much better month than September. And we shall see today, we have seen that price is 117K when yesterday was 112. So we saw that October is finally working. But I want to mention a couple of because I'm not a guy of doing the candle analyst and doing this medium average, whatever. I'm more trying to analyze fundamentals. There are a couple of signals that shows that Bitcoin, I don't know what's going to happen in October, but probably the Q4 is going to be higher, and we are going to reach probably all-time highs. And probably what some analysts say, we will be reaching around 150K. Let's see. One of these topics is that M2 is the global the money supply of United States is reaching all-time highs. Usually Bitcoin is correlated to that, and there is a delay of 2-3 months. The other factor is the DXY, that is the dollar index, that is the strength of the dollar compared with other currencies, that the dollar is showing that the dollar is not strong. and this index is negatively correlated with Bitcoin price. So if the dollar is not strong, Bitcoin tends to rise the price and vice versa. Then we are finally, in United States, there is something called the Treasury General Account. That is an account that the government and the Treasury fills with money. They put an objective and say, we need to reach this objective, and then start spending the money inside of this account. The objective this year is around 850 billion, and now we are around 830. So when this what the United States do, the government is accumulates in this account and then spend everything at the end of the year. So this account is gonna reach the top. So the government will start spending on that account. The other factor is what I was checking is the M2 speed, the speed of money circulation. And now for the last, I think, four quarters, the money circulation is flat. It means that the money circulation is constant. And when the money circulation is constant and the M2 is increasing, price of Bitcoin tends to go up. So there are many factors, and also the rate cuts. The United States is moving to quantitative tightening to quantitative easing, and seems that the quantitative easing is going to be stronger now. So all these parameters, all these factors show us that potentially we are going to have a huge price spike in the last quarter of the month. Let's see. And usually, historically, these months are the best for Bitcoin price. So let's see. I'm a bull. So I agree. I agree.
No, you're right. Yeah, things are setting up really favorably right now, right? You know, you said the M2 money supply. We have potential Fed cuts underway. We're getting regulatory rails put in place specifically by the American government. So right now we've got a lot of tailwinds. But in addition to that, you know, CZ is hyping up October. As we mentioned, the last 6 Octobers or whatever it was have been positive, which makes me ask this question to you. How much influence do you think narratives have in this space right now? Do you think memes and momentum are just as important as fundamentals in Bitcoin adoption right now? Because we are literally on October 1st and we saw a huge pump this morning. So it sounds like people are buying into that narrative. Do you think that this hype and these, you know, things like October, do these actually influence how people are perceiving the market?
I think that, of course, can, but the effect of the retail now in the price of Bitcoin, I think is minimum. I don't think that the price today was pumping because people on Twitter said, okay, let's buy because it's October. I think that now we have bigger players that can move the price even higher. And that's why I try to focus in the macro. Because now we have the treasury companies. MetaPlanet today, I think they announced that they bought more than 5,000 Bitcoin, and now is the 4th company in the world with more Bitcoin. We have the ETFs that are accumulating Bitcoin. Sailor buying Bitcoin after there is no tomorrow. I think that these it's more important than what the sentiment can do. Of course, I think that if CC says it's gonna be October, it's gonna go high, people will want to buy, but I don't think that this can trigger the price.
Yeah. No, I think you're probably right. The seasonality, it's fun because, you know, we like to say history repeats, but it actually rhymes. And this particular year has been a different beast than we've seen in previous cycles. So I think you're right. I think it's the regulatory things we're seeing, rate cuts. There's just a lot of positive momentum right now that I think is going to carry us through Q4 and eclipse those new all-time highs like you're talking about. And if the first day of October is any indication, I think we are right on schedule. All right, we're going to go to this next story here, Fernando, so hang tight. I'm going to bring you back here in a second because Michael Saylor is back doing what he does, and that's tossing around numbers that make you and I feel poor. This time, he says Strategy's ultimate goal is to accumulate $1 trillion in Bitcoin. Yes, $1 trillion. Saylor compares Bitcoin to fire, electricity, and oil, except without the pollution, utility bills, or Middle East wars. In his worldview, Bitcoin is digital property, digital energy, and digital capital all rolled into one. And Strategy wants to be the ExxonMobil of cyberspace. Since 2020, Strategy has turned itself into the poster child for corporate Bitcoin treasuries. Saylor claims more than 180 public companies now currently hold Bitcoin, a number he expects to balloon into the thousands. And he predicts that the real whales, we're talking Apple, Google, and Microsoft, will eventually build Bitcoin into their operating systems and devices. That's when you'll know adoption has gone mainstream, when Siri tells you your paycheck hit in Satoshis. Critics keep warning that corporate buying will crowd out retail. Saylor says that it's nonsense, and he points out that individuals have already gained $1.8 trillion in value since the corporate giants began stacking BTC. Or in other words, the rising tide of Bitcoin is lifting all boats, even if Strategy is trying to build an aircraft carrier. For Saylor, this isn't just about corporate dominance. He says Bitcoin is hope, a foundation of global trust, a new form of economic energy. And his $1 trillion target isn't a ceiling, it is a stepping stone. We're bringing Fernando back. Fernando, Michael Saylor says Strategy's goal is $1 trillion in Bitcoin. When you hear that number, do you think bold visionary or corporate Bitcoin landlord? What does that make you think? $1 trillion? That's hard to even get my head around.
Yeah, it's the whole amount that the U.S. government spent in debt and interest of the debt in a year. So that Saylor is going to turn into Bitcoin. Imagine if the U.S. government do this and print dollars to buy Bitcoin. How can they solve the debt problem? Saylor is not going to stop buying. So he said $1 trillion. And one of the things that I like is that he announced fiat terms, because most of the companies say we are going to reach X amount of Bitcoin by this year. What they don't know, or probably that they don't think about, is Bitcoin has a cap. Bitcoin is only 21 million. So for Saylor, it's good that he said, I want to turn this amount of money into Bitcoin. I think that his goal is to get 1 million Bitcoin for sure. And what he's doing is he's thinking ahead. The thing is that he's not just buying Bitcoin. What he's doing is buying Bitcoin to redefine the finance of the world. He's creating a lot of new instruments that now the rate agencies don't understand or don't want to understand. But when the rate agencies give them the correct score, he's going to be attracting pension funds. He's going to be attracting money from retirement. So he's doing this to change the world, to give hope to the world. He's like attracting dirty, worthless fiat and this in the most perfect wealth storage that we have ever had, that is Bitcoin. So for me, it's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And he predicts that big companies, we're talking Mag 7 companies like Apple, Google, and Microsoft, will one day integrate Bitcoin into their own products. So Fernando, do you think that would feel like true mainstream adoption for Bitcoin, or is that a co-option of Bitcoin by big tech? Like, is this something we're just going to have to live with, that big tech is eventually going to integrate Bitcoin into all of their products and systems? And is that a good thing?
Of course, that's sooner or later you can escape from Bitcoin. Bitcoin is like the law of gravity. You cannot escape from the law of gravity. If I jump from my balcony, I will fall, because this is absolute. So you cannot escape from Bitcoin. And one of the things that I was the other day, I was doing the calculation. I think that if Bitcoin reaches, I think 150 or 160, Saylor is going to has the biggest liquid asset than the other companies. I think because we can take Bitcoin as cash, it's liquid. You can sell Bitcoin immediately. And he's going to have the cash reserve much bigger than the other companies. And I think that these companies are start seeing that they are missing the opportunity, and Bitcoin is becoming mainstream. I think just the adoption has just started with the Bitcoin-backed loans, the treasury companies, all of these things. It's not just that. I think that the adoption is not just going and buy your groceries with Bitcoin or with Satoshis. So sooner or later, this big tech will need to integrate something related to Bitcoin into their platforms. I don't think it's going to happen next year, probably, or the other year. But in these next 5 years, I always say that between 2025 and 2030, world is going to change drastically with Bitcoin and AI. That, of course, Bitcoin is going to be integrated in our daily life. You like it or not? And it's good.
Yeah. Yeah, Bitcoin's coming. It is kind of surprising, though, that we haven't seen any of the other Mag 7 companies jump in yet. Tesla did a couple years ago. I remember that sent the price at the time mooning. So I feel like it's just going to take another one of those to dip their toe in the orange water. And then once the other ones realize they're being left behind by not doing so, we could see a further extension of the corporate arms race we're already seeing right now. So exciting times ahead. All right, we got one more story to go over, Fernando. So hang tight, buddy. We're going to be back with you to chat about it in a second, because move over McDonald's, because Steak and Shake just pulled a 15% same-store sales surge. Whoa, that's alliteration. While the rest of the fast food world is busy fighting over $5 combo meals. The chain credited two things: Bitcoiners and Bobby Kennedy's Make America Healthy Again initiative. Yes, only in 2025 does a burger joint sales pitch involve blockchain payments and government-inspired beef tallow fries. So here's how it happened. Steak and Shake adopted Bitcoin payments back in May. Bitcoiners showed up in force, celebrating on X, and by Q2, the chain's sales jumped nearly 11%, crushing McDonald's, Domino's, and anyone still pretending paper coupons actually matter. By September, sales are up 15%. The company brags it cut transaction fees by up to 50% thanks to Bitcoin, which let it invest in quality upgrades like cooking fries and beef tallow instead of seed oil. Meanwhile, RFK Jr.'s Maha campaign is pressuring food companies to ditch ultra-processed garbage. Steak and Shake leaned into it, promising better ingredients and even teasing a Bitcoin steak burger. That's right, they're combining the sound money diet with the red meat diet. And apparently, it's working. Industry analysts say Steak and Shake is outpacing top U.S. fast food chains despite inflation and labor costs hammering the sector. The takeaway here: fast food can survive if it offers three things: nostalgia, health-conscious upgrades, and the ability to pay with the hardest money on earth. So yeah, you can now supersize your meal and your net worth all in one stop. We're bringing Fernando back. Fernando! Steak and Shake sales jumped 15% after adopting Bitcoin. Do you think this is just a fun marketing gimmick or a real signal that Bitcoin payments are finally going mainstream? What do you think?
Well, I think that as a Bitcoiner, when you find a place where they accept Bitcoin, you try to go and you try to support. So this effect of this burger chain, Steak and Shake, I started accepted Bitcoin. I think that they triggered that many Bitcoiners go there to show the support. For example, here in Hong Kong, I just discovered that there is a coffee shop that you can pay with Satoshi. So if I have to go for a coffee, I go there and pay with Satoshis. So that's the good thing. Plus, if, as you said, I didn't know that they were doing all of this, all the money that they save in transactions, they use it to invest in better ingredients, in removing this poison that is the seed oil. Combined, this is other thing that we the Bitcoiners take care about, because if you go through Twitter, you see that most of us, we eat steak, we don't eat Bitcoiners, we don't eat seed oil, we take care of, I like McDonald's, but I try to limit my McDonald's consumption like once in a month or something like that. But if you have a fast food chain that they are using good ingredients, plus they are accepting Bitcoin, it's amazing. You can go support them with Bitcoin payments, and even though there is a fast food chain, they are doing a healthy fast food option, what is amazing.
Yeah, and they cut out fees by 50%. thanks to Bitcoin. So it begs the question, Fernando, is that the kind of bottom line savings that it'll take for businesses to see to actually care about Bitcoin beyond the headlines? I mean, that's a big deal, right?
Yes, of course. I think I was speaking because I went once. I went once to this coffee shop, and then I went to record a podcast episode with the owner of the coffee shop, and she was telling me that they were with Bitcoin. They cut a lot the transaction fees, and that's why they offer you a 10% discount if you pay with Bitcoin. So the transaction fees is good. The other thing that is good that is that you are receiving real money. You are not receiving an IOU. You get the money at the moment that I'm paying, different with the credit card. And again, it's a good way to show the use case of Bitcoin, the use that you can pay. It's a good way to bring your friend and try to orange peel them. Okay, just go there. I show you with Satoshi. I pay with Satoshis, and again, it's beneficial for the shop. For me, it's beneficial because I got a 10% discount. But if I see in a 5-year perspective, for sure, it's gonna be the most expensive meal I've ever paid. But it is what it is. We need to use Bitcoin. We need to use Bitcoin. It's good to pay in Bitcoin. Of course, I don't like to pay in Bitcoin every day, but every time I have the chance to go to a coffee or to go to a restaurant that they accept Bitcoin, I try to pay with my Satoshis that I have in my Lightning wallet because it's good to do the circular economy and move the Bitcoins, not only have them on cold storage.
That's right. We're all trying to build that Bitcoin circular economy, so it's not just about stacking them sometimes. We got to spend them too. Just make sure you replace them right after, of course.
Yes, of course.
Well, Fernando, our time is running short here today, but I got to say thank you so much for joining us on the show this morning and giving us your insights and expertise. And of course, you have your own amazing podcast, and I'm sure there are people in our audience that haven't got the chance to check it out, but after seeing you, I bet they're interested now. So what's the best place I can send them so that they can see what you're up to?
Well, my YouTube channel was taken down again, so we have a new one. And we have one in English that is Libertarian BTC. Libertarian BTC is our YouTube channel in English. And in Spanish, Libertarian BTC ESP. And thanks to Nolan, I opened a Rumble. So we have a Rumble in English, the Bitcoin Libertarian, and in Spanish, the Bitcoin Libertarian ESP.
I love it. You can do it in Inglés and Espanol. You're catering to everybody. I love it, Fernando. And we love having you on the show, Fernando. So thank you so much for your time, and we can't wait to see you again real soon, bud.
See you again, and thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure as usual.
Pleasure's all mine. See you soon, pal. All right, we're taking a break here on the Blockchain Report, but we'll be right back with more after this. Stay tuned.
It runs on Bitcoin. Introducing Roxom, the first ever exchange where Bitcoiners can trade treasury stocks entirely in BTC. Get exposure to top Bitcoin holding companies like MicroStrategy and Metaplanet, priced in Bitcoin from the start. No fiat, no middlemen. This is what financial freedom looks like. Early access now live at Roxom.com/treasuries. Built by Bitcoiners for Bitcoiners.
All right, welcome back. It's time for a little blockchain without borders. Let's see what's going on in other parts of the world, shall we? Because the Ukraine, well, they have a war, they got martial law, and a battered currency. And still, citizens managed to spend nearly $1 billion on Bitcoin in a single year. You see, according to a report from the European Bank for Reconstruction and Development, Ukrainians bought about $882 million worth of Bitcoin between July 2023 and July of 2024. Total crypto inflows into the country, a jaw-dropping $106 billion worth. That puts Ukraine near the very top of global crypto adoption charts. Roughly 10% of Ukrainians now hold cryptocurrency. That's twice the percentage in Nigeria, which is also high on the list with $59 billion in inflows. And while some of these are small retail buys, the report makes it clear that a big chunk came from large institutional transfers between $1 and $10 million, along with professional trades in the $10,000 to $1 million range. Or in other words, this isn't just grandma stacking Satoshis, it's serious money moving through the system. And why so much crypto, you ask? Well, because when Russia invaded in 2022, the National Bank of Ukraine slammed restrictions on financial transactions to prevent capital flight. That pushed people into Bitcoin and other digital assets as a lifeline. The government in Kiev has been scrambling to catch up. A draft law that defines how crypto is taxed and legally recognized finally made it through the first reading in Parliament this month after years of delays. Supporters hope legalization will attract foreign investment and fatten government coffers. Critics point out that politicians have been promising regulation since 2022 and only now managed to get this far. But whatever happens in Parliament, the trend here is pretty clear. Ukrainians are already heavy crypto users, and Bitcoin has finally become part of daily financial survival. And they're not alone. Nigeria, Ukraine, and Turkey are now 3 standout countries for crypto adoption, according to Chainalyst. Turkey didn't make the EBRD's top list, but ranked 11th globally last year. Bottom line is that Ukraine may not have legalized crypto yet, but the people have already voted with their wallets to the tune of nearly $1 billion in Bitcoin. All right, gang, so now what we got coming up for you is a revisiting of one of our favorite interviews of all time with the man, the myth, the legend himself, Samson Mow of Jan 3. So take a look at this talk from him and I had just a little while ago. You won't want to miss it. Let's run it, guys. All right, welcome back. It's time for today's deep dive. And our guest, we've got a treat for you today, as our guest is the man helping nation states orange pill faster than you can say hyper Bitcoinization. He's the CEO of Jan 3, the visionary behind the Aqua Wallet, the mastermind of the Infinite Fleet universe, and one of the loudest, most relentless voices for sovereign Bitcoin adoption on the planet. From building infrastructure at Blockstream to advising El Salvador and now leading the charge toward a $1 million Bitcoin future, this guy doesn't just talk about it, he builds it. You've seen him debate Roger Ver, clap back at Charlie Lee, and now maybe even appear on HBO's Money Electric. Please give a big blockchain report welcome to the Bitcoin ambassador himself, Samson Mow. Samson, wow. This is quite the ovation. The crowd's loving you, and we are certainly glad to have you with us on the show today. How are you on this fine day?
I'm great, Hank. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Bitcoin's still chugging along. Things are moving in the right direction. And I got to tell you, I'm really excited to have you on the show today. I have watched many of videos of yours, and you are the man with the true signal. So we are excited to talk about you and learn more about your history and everything you're doing today. You ready to rock?
Ready. Let's do it.
All right, Samson. So let's start at the beginning, shall we? I mean, you've had an incredible career. I mean, from game development at Ubisoft to Bitcoin strategy at Blockstream, now leading Jan 3. Take us back. What first got you interested in Bitcoin?
It's not a very exciting story. I was just reading about Bitcoin. I used to consume RSS feeds voraciously, and it would pop up all the time. I think I first started reading feeds in, I don't know, like 2006 or 7. But, you know, I would just see it come up all the time, and it would always be negative news because back in the day, you know, it was always bad. Bitcoin was bad, used by bad people and doing bad things. And we've come a long way from that. But, you know, that's generally how it was framed in the media back then. And I didn't really take much of an interest in it until I came across an article talking about how to mine Bitcoin. And that kind of intrigued me. So I went through the whole setup flow and tried to set up on my laptop. I think it was 2013 maybe or 2012. And of course, I didn't mine any, but just going through that and setting everything up and running a node, that's what made me realize that Bitcoin was incredibly unique and very transformative for the world. So nothing very exciting, just curiosity and just reading a lot.
Yeah. Well, exciting or not, that seems to be the path of a lot of Bitcoiners of both past and present, right? You just educate yourself on the space, and then it's kind of hard not to orange pill yourself sometimes with all of the information that's out there about Bitcoin. I mean, you clearly see where it's headed. And as somebody who started in the video game and tech space, did that in any way shape how you approach Bitcoin adoption and infrastructure today? Because you have a really interesting background.
I would say so. So I've worked on games for quite some time. I started out at a game studio called Relic. I worked on Company of Heroes and Dawn of War, which are RTS games or real-time strategy games. And that's kind of why I built Infinite Fleet, because I wanted to make something persistent, like an MMO RTS. But working on those games, working on the online version of Company of Heroes, and building games at Ubisoft Online, that kind of made me understand really at an in-depth, detailed level of how you build these virtual worlds. And there were direct parallels to these virtual worlds with the real world, which is as a game developer, you're controlling the economy and you have to manage the economy, much like the Fed or any central bank does. So I think that kind of tinted my vision in a certain way, which made me more susceptible to being orange pilled by Bitcoin because, running a game and running an online world, balancing the economy, trying to control hyperinflation, you kind of you kind of seen behind the shroud of how a central bank is dealing with things, so to speak. And you can see the appeal of something like Bitcoin, which is decentralized, permissionless, and just functions on its own, almost like it's a living organism.
Yeah. Of those games, I'm a bit of a strategy game guy myself. Let's just say I've been playing Civilization since like the first iteration. That's my jam. Outside of your own, what's your favorite strategy game that you find yourself going to play time and again?
Well, these days I don't have that much time to play. So
Yeah.
if I have time, I'm usually just testing Infinite Fleet, but my time is very limited these days in terms of what I can
Yeah.
do for fun. So it's either Bitcoin or working on Infinite Fleet. That's the closest I can get to playing a game.
Fair enough. I know being an adult's just the worst, isn't it? We can't do any of the fun stuff because we have productivity to worry about and everything. So I feel you on that front. Speaking of productivity, though, you, my friend, have been a very busy guy. I mean, let's go all the way back to BTCC, all right? What was your role like there, and how did that experience prepare you for all the things you're doing now?
Well, that's a pretty big question. So BTCC was an exchange back in the day, one of the biggest in China and the world. And it grew to a massive size simply because of Mt. Gox blowing up. And everyone went to BTCC to trade. So that was kind of the origin story there. But I had to learn a lot of things jumping into it. That was my first Bitcoin job. And I had to learn about how exchanges operate and how Bitcoin worked and everything else. So there's a steep learning curve, but it was a very interesting experience because then it kind of got me sucked into the block size war because we were running a mining pool at the same time, and the politics of Bitcoin came to roost. And Gavin Andreessen and Mike Hearn were trying to contact us, telling us to upgrade to their fork of Bitcoin. So very interesting times, I would say, and a lot of learning really, really quickly.
I bet. I mean, and that took you to another stop on your journey, which of course was Blockstream, which we've had the pleasure of having Sean Bill in studio here. I know Adam we've interviewed over at the Bitcoin conference this year. And you yourself were instrumental in pushing Bitcoin infrastructure forward there. What were the most important lessons that you took from your chapter at Blockstream? Because you were there for a good bit, right?
Yeah, I think 5 years plus.
Yeah, I
Um,
think that counts.
there's a number of lessons. I mean, the reason I joined Blockstream was to work on Bitcoin infrastructure. And possibly it was because of what I saw in the block size war and the demand for Bitcoin to scale. So working on technologies like Liquid, like Lightning, that would directly help Bitcoin reach billions of people around the world, I think was a very important step in my Bitcoin journey and something I think that the network needed. But also just building up more resiliency towards attacks, trying to mitigate something like the block size wars happening again, and kind of patching holes I thought were weak spots in Bitcoin's defense armor, like Block Explorer. I wanted to launch a Block Explorer because if you look back at the block size wars, most of the block explorers, which are sort of the source of truth for most people, were controlled by the opposition, the big blockers. So that was a big attack vector that I think could have swung things in their favor to control Bitcoin. But fortunately, they weren't smart enough to figure that one out. But we launched Blockstream Info, which is now an important part of the infrastructure of the Bitcoin ecosystem, and then Mempool Space launched too. So I think we're in a good place now on that front. But just getting more technology out there, letting more people take custody of their Bitcoin. We launched Blockstream Green. That was a rebrand of Green Address, which was acquired by Blockstream. We launched the Jade wallet, but a lot of things to make Bitcoin more accessible to people. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, aside from education, which I guess is part of it, it does seem like the biggest hurdle that we're facing right now to real mass adoption is that accessibility and making it more user-friendly, because God knows my mother isn't going to be sending anything to her from anybody's cold wallet anytime soon. So no, I totally agree with that, and we'll get into more of that in a little bit. But right now, let's refocus and kind of talk about what you're up to now. I mean, I want to talk specifically about Jan 3. What's the core mission there, and what does accelerating hyper-Bitcoinization actually look like day to day?
So hyper-Bitcoinization, if you don't know, is the point at which you don't need to sell Bitcoin anymore. It's like the meme from The Matrix where Morpheus asks Neo, what are you going to do when Bitcoin is $1 million? Like, you don't need to sell it. Right? It's just Bitcoin everywhere. But it's really just getting more Bitcoin adoption and making it so that you can just sit in Bitcoin and live your life in Bitcoin. And I guess the broader mission is to make Bitcoin accessible too, kind of extending what I started at Blockstream, because we build on a lot of Blockstream technology. A lot of people don't appreciate this, but Blockstream's invested massive amounts of capital and resources and manpower into these scaling technologies. And at Jan 3, we're leveraging those things to build Aqua and build a super accessible wallet that anybody could use. Like your grandma can use Aqua, send and receive funds. But the goal is anybody could use Aqua and live their lives just keeping Bitcoin only and swapping out to stable coins, using a Visa card when you need to connect back to the fiat system. But that's the vision of Jan 3, just making Bitcoin ubiquitous.
Okay, well, it sounds like a good mission. We're all here for it. And you've gone a step further recently as you've been working directly on nation-state adoptions of Bitcoin, specifically with El Salvador's Bitcoin efforts. And I would love to know, how did Jan 3 get involved with that? And what role did you personally play in helping El Salvador ride the Bitcoin bandwagon?
Well, that was a connection through Jack Mallers, a friend of mine. So he was in El Salvador, I think staying in El Zante at that time, and he got those connections, and he hit me up and said, guess what? Something's going to happen here. Do you want to get Blockstream involved? And I said, yeah, of course. So we started connecting with a lot of people in the government there and advising them on a number of topics. One of which was the Bitcoin bonds, which were announced but not delivered, unfortunately. But that was an interesting time, and I still think there's a lot of potential for countries to adopt Bitcoin in a big way.
Oh, absolutely. And I got to imagine, after having your name associated with helping El Salvador, are there other conversations happening right now with other countries or governments that are interested in Bitcoin? Maybe you can't mention any specifics, but what is it kind of feeling like around the old country government water cooler right now?
Well, there's always been interest, and it waxes and wanes kind of with Bitcoin price and what's happening in Bitcoin. Every time the crypto space has a blow up like Terra Luna or FTX, that dampens a lot of our efforts because Bitcoin becomes an unapproachable and undiscussable topic. So this is why it's important to spread also the message of Bitcoin only, because when you're playing with crypto, you're playing with fire, and these things usually don't end very well. But yeah, it does change from time to time based on market situation. But generally there is a lot of interest still. But we've shifted our strategy at Jan3 a lot over the past, I would say, year and a half to focus less on just engaging at a high level and bringing the theory of why Bitcoin adoption will benefit a country, but more focus on executing and starting small projects with governments to make sure that something's actually happening. Because what we found is a lot of governments are keen to like meet and talk about it and possibly announce something, but then things drop off and nothing happens. So we're trying more to do less announcy things and meetings and actual projects, get things greenlit, small pilot projects, sandboxes, and things like that that will bring real adoption on the ground.
Well, that's what we love to hear, people actually doing things and not just talking about them. And with that kind of being said, this most recent cycle, we've seen this surge of institutional adopters. Obviously, this corporate Bitcoin treasury thing is all over the place. Do you feel like nation state adoption will be the next big driver for Bitcoin's price going forward? Because it seems like that's where things are slowly headed. But I feel like everyone's kind of waiting on permission, so to speak, from the United States to act first before we really see it in mass and not just in countries like El Salvador. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, this has always been a big challenge with nation state adoption, which is countries, governments move very slowly. There's a ton of red tape. I mean, if you've ever tried to renew your driver's license, you kind of get the sense of that, right? But it's like
I got to do it at the end of the month.
yeah, they want to do something, but it's not easy to do it. Even at the city level, it can be very challenging. So a friend of mine, Ken Sim, the mayor of Vancouver, has been pushing forward a proposal to have the city of Vancouver adopt Bitcoin as a reserve asset. But you know, he's thinking that might be years away through going through committees and analysis and research and getting approvals all up and down the food chain. So it's not a simple thing unless you have control over the legislature, which most countries that is not really a thing for the president or prime minister to have. There's a lot of discourse, a lot of consensus building, and again, a lot of red tape. So I think it's still possible that countries can adopt a reserve. It might be that they're waiting for the US and the Trump admin to do something, but I think smaller, more agile countries could potentially move faster. So we might see another Bitcoin treasury pop up. I think Pakistan has announced that they're setting something up, but maybe a few more. But we're actively pushing for that. But again, we're not pinning all of our efforts on that and our hopes on that, but rather starting with real projects to actually have on the ground adoption, and then maybe the reserves come as a secondary thing.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense, and it's kind of like how like a smaller tech company is a little bit more nimble and able to make things happen faster than a big conglomerate like a Google or an Amazon, just because of that size actually does benefit them. So I think you're right. We probably will see these smaller countries join first, and then United States eventually, if Cynthia Lummis has anything to do about it. But you talked about building actual products, which is a great segue into what I want to talk about now, which is Aqua. Tell us a little bit about Aqua. How is it different from the other Bitcoin wallets, and why did you decide to build it in the first place? What was the impetus for that?
Well, Aqua is just a wallet I want to use myself, and I want it to exist.
There you go.
I think that's probably the most important thing. That if you're building a product, you have to be very passionate about that product, and it should have a higher level purpose than just being a simple thing that exists on the market. It should have a goal. So Aqua's goal is to support our efforts at Jan3 to increase Bitcoin adoption around the world. So we need a wallet that anybody can use and offers a ton of utility. Because if our goal, we've stated before, our goal is to onboard the next billion people to Bitcoin. And you can't just say, you know, use Bitcoin. Bitcoin's great. You have to give them a wallet, services, tools in there that just make it indispensable. So when we think of Aqua, we're kind of thinking, what do we need there? We need ways to interact with the legacy system. We need a low barrier of entry so that the unbanked can access it, because that's probably a good portion of the next billion that will use Bitcoin out of necessity. So we have to find ways that we can onboard a lot of people and give them something that they just need in their daily lives. Like the dream for me is that people don't think of Aqua as a Bitcoin wallet. It's just how they access the financial system, how they manage their savings, how they're spending money, how they're saving money, and paying their bills. It's just something in their day-to-day lives.
And you mentioned that Aqua was built to onboard the next generation of Bitcoin users. So that makes me wonder, what are some of the biggest bottlenecks preventing that mass adoption of Bitcoin in like emerging markets, for instance? And how is Jan3 working to actually solve those problems for the future?
Well, one thing is the most Bitcoin wallets, you kind of asked this earlier, but how does it differ from other Bitcoin wallets? And I think our biggest differentiator is that we support Tether natively. Tether is issued on Liquid natively too. So we're the only Bitcoin wallet that kind of puts Tether, a stable coin, front and center in front of people. And I think this is sort of our Trojan horse to get into the unbanked markets of the world, LATAM, Africa, basically any region underserved. They're using Tether and they're seeking Tether because they look for a digital dollar, a way to access dollar value. And I think most Bitcoin wallets don't really have that. They might have some way to kind of construct an artificial dollar, but they're not tapping into the network effects of Tether. I think they're at somewhere at 400 to 500 million users in the world today. And so far, it feels like we're the only Bitcoin wallet that's embraced that and said, well, we should get those people into a more Bitcoin-focused wallet because a lot of them are probably using an altcoin wallet because altcoins have embraced Tether, but not so much Bitcoin wallets. But I think that's changing now. But we're probably the first to really say, we're a Bitcoin and Tether wallet. And we have a large user base in LATAM, in Argentina and Brazil. I think it's just because of that. We offer people what they want, and we're not forcing them to just use a Bitcoin Lightning wallet and just adopt a Bitcoin standard immediately. But we're willing to meet them where they are, and that is they want dollars. Well, you can have dollars in Aqua, and then you can swap them to Bitcoin, and then you can use the Aqua wallet to send to a hardware wallet. But we're using that to onboard them to Bitcoin.
Interesting. Well, I love that you literally built that because you were like, this is something that I would want. And if you would want it, clearly there's a lot of other people out there that are looking for the same benefit that the Aqua wallet provides. So kudos to you. But it does make me wonder, like, how do you measure success at like with the wallet or at Jan3? Like, is it adoption metrics? Is it wallet usage? Government partnerships? Is there something else? How do you know that you're moving the needle?
Well, we haven't really pushed Aqua yet, so everything that we've accomplished so far is organic, and we've kind of been lucky. Like we've got 80,000, almost 90,000 downloads just organically, and we crossed 160 million in swap volume. So we let you swap different assets in Aqua from USDT to liquid Bitcoin to Bitcoin, and stable coins across other stable coins. So all of that adds up to about 160 million so far. And that's all organic. Wow. Our next big push is a big UI refresh and localization. So we kind of did a little bit of localization, but we stopped to focus on other features. But once we get the new UI and localization done, then I think we're going to really aggressively market that. But to answer your question, it is usage and users. We want to be the first Bitcoin wallet to get to, 1 billion users, if possible. But maybe it is.
You guys got to partner up with Mr. Beast. He'll get his billion followers. You get 1 billion users. It sounds like a great episode just waiting to happen. I'll give him a call after this.
Yeah, send me his contact.
His contact info. I got you. No problem. You've also been in the past a pretty harsh critic on fiat. I believe you've even said that it fails spectacularly. So it begs the question, are there any countries right now on your radar that you think are on the brink of bad times right now? I mean, I know you mentioned Pakistan's looking at doing a Bitcoin reserve, but are there any countries whose fiat just isn't doing the trick right now that you're like, watch over there?
I mean, Argentina, Turkey, There's a
Yeah.
lot of, there are many countries that seem on the brink of fiat collapse. And I think they're still hanging on. Um, Even the US is not looking that great right now. And I think that has to,
Right.
that is driving a lot of the initiatives right now. If you look at the US, they're embracing stablecoins because they have to. There's no other choice. Like nobody is buying their
Yeah.
US treasuries. Like Tether, I think, is the like top 15, a top 15 holder up there above many countries because there is no more demand. So if you look at where things are going, like fiat is definitely on its last legs, and it's possibly a few years away, maybe 5, maybe 10. Nobody knows for sure, but it's definitely not on an upward growth trajectory.
Yeah, no, it certainly doesn't seem like that. And it makes me wonder, as someone who's really got their hand on the pulse, is there like a dark horse nation out there that you think will surprise people by kind of going El Salvadorian in their Bitcoin adoption next? I know we talked about Pakistan, but is there anybody else who's a little off the radar that you wouldn't be surprised if they came out and said tomorrow, hey, we're adopting a Bitcoin standard?
Um, Let me think. I would say yes,
Take
but
your
it's
time.
it's subject to the
Yeah.
same challenges. Like it's difficult for a country to just pull an El Salvador and say we're doing this because they'd be discussing it in advance and they would need to pass legislation, right? Like Cynthia Lummis's Bitcoin Act is still kind of in flux. It's still not
Right.
move forward yet. But it's difficult for any country to do that. But then there are countries that can do that because the president or prime minister has unilateral control. So I don't rule it out, but I would say it's hard to get a surprise like El Salvador.
Yeah, no, I think you're probably right. I just figure you're probably in a bunch of backroom meetings I'm not ever even knowing are going on. So maybe you had an inside scoop, but I wouldn't blame you if you didn't want to share it with us on the show today. That's okay. With this all being said, though, do you think we'll ever see a government itself issue sovereign debt specifically to buy Bitcoin? Is that not too far off in the future, or is that just no one's even thinking about that right now?
You'd think it's a no-brainer, and that anyone
Yeah.
with fiat money would just do that. But, you know, I think they would need to first make that foray into Bitcoin and set up a treasury. Like even setting up a reserve, a treasury is a big challenge because the question is who holds the keys? Is it with a custodian? Is it with some multi-sig setup in the country? And that is like a big blocker in and of itself. So I think once you have that hurdle cleared, then it opens up the possibility of let's just print the fiat and buy Bitcoin. But I think to reach that stage as a government, you have to already have decided like fiat is over. And to get there, you have to really understand Bitcoin at a fundamental level and deep level. So I think we're a ways away, even though for us as Bitcoiners, it's a no-brainer. And if we had access to a infinite money printing machine, we'd be doing that already. I mean, you could argue that Sailor's already doing that with strategy.
Yeah. I think we just need to start sending all of the politicians out there. Have you seen the God Bless Bitcoin movie that was out that came out like last year?
I have not.
Okay. I mean, you already know everything that's in there, but boy, is it a really great and informative watch for anybody who's kind of dipping their toes in the orange pond, so to speak. Because it really, I mean, it has so many great people like, of your ilk, so to speak, talking about Bitcoin, and Mark Cuban's in it. It's just a who's who of people in the industry. Michael Saylor's got a whole bunch of parts in it. But it goes on to explain why Bitcoin's important, why we need it. So it's like, if anybody can tell me they don't believe in it after seeing that, well, then I think you belong in some kind of institution. It makes a good case. It's a good flick.
Well,
I want to switch gears a little bit, Sam. Oh, go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just gonna add, like, in this day and age, there's just so much information. You have documentaries, you have movies, you have, I don't know, hundreds of books now about Bitcoin. It's just so easy to learn if you're willing to learn, compared to back when I learned about Bitcoin, where there was very little information. There's no podcast, like maybe one, but it's kind of like when Andreas Antonopoulos was talking to an empty room. That was what it was like back then. So if you are alive today and you know about Bitcoin and you haven't learned about Bitcoin, it's almost all on you. There's no one to blame when hyper-Bitcoinization hits and you missed it because you didn't choose to learn a little bit more.
Yeah, we're entering what, year 16, right, of it? And if you've still chosen to keep your head in the sand, well, that's kind of on you, fam. So we can only do so much. You can lead a horse, right?
Yeah.
And in this most recent cycle, it's been particularly interesting, right? We've seen Bitcoin hit new all-time highs. In fact, when it reached over 110K, I believe you tweeted something to the effect of 0.112M isn't interesting in terms of the Bitcoin price, which makes me ask, what is an interesting Bitcoin price to you right now, Samson? And what kind of number are we going to need to see till it actually gets your full attention?
I think maybe 0.25, but definitely 0.5 M. That is where it really starts getting interesting. I think at 0.5, we've reached half of gold. So that's when the train accelerates. So nothing stops the train, but the train accelerates at 0.5. That's when you start massive demonetization of gold, real estate, and everything else, and it just gets sucked into Bitcoin. But I think it all happens very quickly because once you hit 0.25, zero point 0.5 is not far away, and then 1 is not far away.
You've mentioned in your predictions, you've said that Bitcoin will hit 1 million. I've heard many a times. And you've gone on record saying that it'll happen seemingly like a sudden violent explosion. How much of a time frame does that mean to you? And why do you think it will be all of the sudden? Is it one of those situations where things happen gradually until they happen suddenly and will reach kind of an inflection point? Or do you expect a huge catalyst like nation state adoption happen and then all of a sudden we're off to the races?
I think it's all of what you just said there. It is gradually and then suddenly. And nobody knows exactly when suddenly hits, but you can definitely see the suddenly on the horizon with everything that's happening. I mean, ETFs alone are buying multiple times the mine supply of Bitcoin. Then you factor in the corporate adoption, which is accelerating.
Right.
Like, strategy is not buying less, they're buying more and they're raising more every time. I think STRC upsized from half a billion to 2.5 billion. Metaplanet is increasing the velocity and size of their buys, and then you have new entrants coming in too. Adam Back has announced a BSTR with, I think, 30,000 coins committed. So nothing is slowing down. Everything is speeding up. So 1 million doesn't seem like it's a far away thing. There are a lot of people that theorize that, post institutional adoption, we're seeing less volatility. It's going to be a slow slog, but I just don't see that. Not with the velocity of the buying that's happening on the market. Even 80,000 coins dropped on Sunday night barely made a dent. Like, Bitcoin is numb to all of this
Right.
now. It's just going up.
Yeah. And this has been a really interesting cycle compared to ones of the past, right? Because we haven't seen much of anything from retail this time. And I remember the last cycle, it felt like it was almost entirely retail driven. You'd go on TikTok, there'd be 1 million influencers pumping up price predictions for this, that, and the other. But they seem absent this time around, and it seems to be mostly institutional. Why do you think retail is sitting on the sidelines this go around?
I don't know. It could be the retail's out of cash. Like, I think most
Yeah.
people don't factor in that the economy of most countries in the world right now are not in a good state. And it could just be that retail is broke. And it's going to be institutional capital. It's going to be investors rotating out of other things like real estate and gold into Bitcoin. Or it's going to be pension funds that need to cover unfunded liabilities buying strategy or a strategy product. So maybe that's the thing. I'm not really sure, but I would just add a caveat that right now I would say we're overheated because you can see alts started to outperform Bitcoin temporarily. And in my recollection and experience, that's never a good thing. Usually we come back down, and then when Bitcoin dominance goes up, then we go back up again. in a more healthy manner.
Right. So right now, does it feel like to you that maybe the Bitcoin price is getting a little frothy and we're finally starting to see some people in the space take their gains and they maybe put those into what they might consider high alpha plays, like Ethereum has woken up finally, XRP's been surging the last month. Do you think we might be at the start of a quote unquote altcoin rally based on what we've seen in previous cycles?
I mean, there are always altcoin rallies and then they always fizzle out. If you look at the history of crypto, it's like everything goes down over time. Nothing sustains. And that includes things like Ethereum. But they're so small now relative to Bitcoin and so illiquid relative to Bitcoin that it is easy for people to pump them up. And that's maybe where the retail money is going because they see quick gains and then they're buying an alt. And then the alt drops and they get flushed out. And that cycle repeats over and over. That's why I think it's healthier if we go down a bit. Even Bitcoin goes down a little bit, flush out the alts, increase dominance, and then go up in a more healthy fashion.
Right. What do you feel like it's going to take for retail to really get their head back in the Bitcoin game? Because part of me feels like the reason we haven't seen much from retail this go around is unit bias, right? People are feeling like, especially if they're not particularly knowledgeable in the space, 120K, I can't afford a whole Bitcoin. Yet I can buy a Bitcoin to like the 8th decimal point, right? And if you told many traditional finance advisors, like, hey, I got something that accumulates at about 30% a year, they'd say, put all of your money in that right now. But for some reason, it seems like nobody wants to hop in on the Bitcoin bandwagon aside from institutions. Do you think maybe we need a price point so high for Bitcoin that people see 0.1 and be like, oh, that's worth getting? Or like, I feel like it's a psychological reason that retail isn't playing ball this go around. Does that make sense? Or do you maybe think it's just something else entirely?
No, it makes sense. I don't think we've reached FOMO territory yet. And again, 0.25, 0.5, those are my interesting targets. But I did a calculation a few weeks back about the cost of eggs and inflation. And if you look at eggs alone, the real rate of inflation is something like 11%. And if you factor that in with our 2021 highs, adjusted for inflation, that's like 100K. So we're just kind of beating inflation right now, real inflation. And real inflation probably higher than 11%. Like that's just arbitrarily picking eggs as a baseline. But, that's not FOMO territory. FOMO territory is really outpacing inflation. And I think people will subconsciously know that when we get to, 0.2, 0.25. And then they're going to wake up and go, okay, well, I need to get into this now because it's meaningful now. But maybe subconsciously the market just knows we're more or less tracking inflation.
Interesting. That's a good point. I would be interested in looking more into that, but that makes a lot of sense. And, a big part of the reason the price of Bitcoin this cycle, we're in the 120s, right? We can't ignore is the ETFs that we've been seeing, right? Left and right, IBIT. Do you feel like these are good or bad for Bitcoin adoption? Like, what's your take on Bitcoin ETFs and institutional involvement overall? Is this a necessary step forward? Or is this a Trojan horse that threatens Bitcoin's fundamentals over the long run?
Well, there's mixed views on this, and it's a very complicated topic because when people are holding funds in ETF, it's obviously suboptimal to holding Bitcoin on your own wallet, which is actually far easier to do, to use Bitcoin as a bearer asset than, say, gold. And, I'm conflicted too. Like I see the value in ETFs because it gives ordinary people access to Bitcoin and they don't need to go through the challenges of learning self-custody, even though we as Bitcoiners don't think it's a hard thing. But conceptually for a normal person that has never touched a crypto asset, having complete responsibility is a scary thing, believe it or not. So ETFs eliminate that, but ETFs also act as a portal to TradFi money. And I've said this like numerous times over the past few years since the ETFs were approved, but there is no more barrier to capital inflow to Bitcoin. You can look at jan3.com/charts. We have a number of charts on ETF flows, but inflows are predominant, as we know, and there is no barrier. So in past bull runs, you would see like Coinbase goes down or something, or exchanges are backlogged, like Kraken, Bitfinex, they can't KYC fast enough, and then the bull run tapers off. But that's not the case anymore. Like you have, everyone has a brokerage account, or most people have a brokerage account in the Western world, and they can simply buy, and you eliminate that need to onboard at an exchange. So that's a huge thing. But moreover, having that portal to TradFi money means pension funds, institutional capital, those can all flow directly into Bitcoin unhindered. And that is a big thing. Like if you tell a pension fund, similar to we're talking about nation states, buy Bitcoin and hold it. The first question is, can we? Can we get the approvals? Can we get sign off? Can we change our charter? But then second is, how do we hold it? Like, is someone going to set up a Blockstream Jade and keep it there, or set up a multi-sig? There are a lot of complexities, just like with a country, on how to hold a bearer asset, and especially something like Bitcoin. So having the option to just buy IBIT or FBTC or what's Bitwise's, it just changes the whole game, and there is no more barrier to entry.
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it every day. More and more of these things are coming up. IBIT's, I think, the fastest growing ETF in history. Wild times. But in addition to the ETF inflows, we're also seeing all of these companies issue preferred shares or raise capital specifically to buy Bitcoin. Is that becoming the new playbook for corporate treasuries? And if so, does that worry you for companies not named Strategy? Because I'd love to get your thoughts on it, because it works for MicroStrategy. They've been doing it for 5-6 years, but we got a lot of new players in the space. Is this sustainable for everybody?
I would say so. I mean, Strategy has shown us that there is a glitch in the matrix, and you can get infinite money. Basically, that's what it is. Zero interest loans are infinite money. So as more companies find these kind of glitches, they'll tap into them. Metaplanet's another example. It's partially regulatory based, because buying spot is punitive. So people will just buy Strategy for exposure. Buy Metaplanet for exposure. So I think there are different glitches in different regions and jurisdictions that let companies tap into this money glitch. And that is good for Bitcoin, because it accelerates hyper-Bitcoinization. It accelerates the global wealth that is flowing into Bitcoin.
And as we're in this period of time where we're seeing ETFs, we're seeing Bitcoin corporate treasuries, do you think that there's any real risk that Bitcoin could be absorbed or controlled by the hands of traditional finance? Or are maximalists still winning the fight for Bitcoin's future right now?
Well, that's an interesting topic, Hank. I think it was like a year or 2 years ago, I forgot now, but I tweeted about Bitcoin being split, bifurcated into, approved Bitcoin, the Bitcoin that's in ETFs and in funds, versus free Bitcoin, which is the self-custodied, freely circulating Bitcoin outside of the control of institutions. And I think that possibility is still there. We'll see how it plays out for sure. But I don't see Bitcoin possibly being captured, because Bitcoin will always exist outside the system. Bitcoin within the system, within the financial system, is an arbitrary construct. But the natural state of Bitcoin is free flowing outside of anyone's control. And I don't think that will change at any time. You might have a good portion of Bitcoin locked up in ETFs and whatnot, or in nation state treasuries, but you also have a good portion not in treasuries. So I don't see it as an existential risk. There could be this separation in the future, but then you'll just have two different prices for Bitcoin, just like Argentina has two different prices for the dollar blue, and then the official dollar rate.
Right. Interesting take. I like that. But there are a lot of pundits out there, right, that still say to this day that Bitcoin's volatility makes it unfit as a reserve asset to begin with. How do you respond to that right now? I mean, and do you think that argument still holds water, or with each passing day, especially during this cycle, are we seeing Bitcoin's volatility kind of get muted quite a bit? Because that's kind of how it's feeling right now.
I would say so. I mean, 80,000 coins dumped on the weekend spot.
Yeah.
It barely made a dent. And I think that is the most poignant example of reduced volatility. Like in past years, let's go back 4 or 5 years, that would have significantly dropped Bitcoin, at least temporarily. But now it's almost like Bitcoin's numb. There's nothing. It's like, yeah, drop 80K, drop 100K, maybe 500K. Nothing will happen. It'll just dip down a little bit, but the buy pressure is just massive and sustained. Like every corporation with a Bitcoin strategy is buying at that depressed price, and it just scoops it all up.
Yeah, do you feel like the lack of volatility we saw during this recent like 80,000 coin price dump is a pretty clear signal of the that we are fully in the maturation process of Bitcoin as an asset? Because like you said, back in the day, that would have been a 20% drop overnight. Now it went down to, I think, to like just around 115. We're already back up to 118 in a couple of days. So to you, is that we're moving in the right direction? Is that how that kind of is feeling right now?
Well, it's not about the right or wrong direction. This is just an inevitability. As Bitcoin becomes the new world reserve asset, the price will go up. It'll go to 1 million, it'll go to 10, and then it'll reach dollar sat parity. And probably before that happens, we hit a terminus point where, you stop pricing things in dollars because it doesn't make sense anymore. And there's tons of historical examples of this, right? Like fast failure of fiat currencies is the norm. It's not the exception. Look at the German mark, right? That's fast fail. Every currency, every fiat currency fast fails. It doesn't fail over 50 to 100 years, except for maybe the dollar. It's failed over 100 years, but it's coming to a close. But as it increases in value, then of course you see less volatility because it takes more to make a dent. If you go back to, I think last year, right? The Saxony government in Germany, they dumped 50,000, and that made a bigger impact than the 80,000. So you can already see in a very short time frame a far more muted effect of coins being dropped.
Yeah, no, you make great points, and those are all very real world cases that we are seeing it in real time. But despite that, the resiliency that we've seen from Bitcoin's price, especially as of late, we're still seeing a lot of big players not interested in Bitcoin right now. In fact, you've called out Wikipedia for rejecting Bitcoin donations in the past. Why do you think major institutions, why are some of them still hesitating to hold Bitcoin despite all the upside that we see and have been seeing over the last couple of months?
It's a direct parallel of, why do ordinary people, why does your neighbor not want to learn about Bitcoin? Because there's a cognitive load. Like you are living your life, you're doing your job, doing your errands, buying groceries, you go home, you watch Netflix. Like, where in your normie life do you fit in listening to a podcast with Sailor, right? Like, it's something new they have to introduce. Or if you're willing to listen to the podcast, making that first step and buying Bitcoin has a barrier too, because now you have to register on some exchange or some platform, you have to send money. But there are things you have to do to get into Bitcoin. And it sounds really stupid, but that inertia it's like daunting for a lot of people. And that applies to corporations as well. So if you remember, I think last year, Saylor delivered a great message to Microsoft when they were tabling the issue of adding Bitcoin to their reserve, adding Bitcoin reserves. And, they voted against it. So why is that? I think it's because it's the same thing. They have their business model. They have, multi-billion-dollar acquisitions on the table. They have a ton of things. Where in their schedule are they going to figure out how to buy Bitcoin, find a custodian, probably they'll use a custodian, vet the custodian, and execute a strategy? Like, it's a distraction to them, unfortunately, for better or for worse. And that is really what's holding everyone back. But When we hit that 0.25, 0.5 M mark, I think that changes. It suddenly becomes not a distraction, but a necessity. And if you, again, look at history, people like to do things when it's necessary, not when it's optional.
That's a great point. So it's kind of like we're just waiting for that inflection point where these doubters, Bitcoin just becomes too big to ignore for them, and they have to consider it, because if they don't, they're going to be left the way of the dinosaurs. And with how quickly corporations are snatching up BTC right now, that might be happening a lot sooner than later for a lot of these companies, unfortunately. But like you said, it's kind of their fault for keeping their head in the sand. So sorry, guys. I want to kind of look ahead now to the rest of this year, 2025. This has been an incredibly exciting year in the Bitcoin ecosystem. As we look forward to the second half, what's the most exciting or underappreciated trend in Bitcoin that more people should be paying attention to right now?
I mean, I think it's just the corporate adoption. And I think corporate adoption will lead to nation state adoption, because every massive success story in a country of some company holding Bitcoin makes Bitcoin undeniable, and the government can't ignore it. So let's just take Japan as an example. We've been engaging, politicians in Japan and a lot of agencies. Like we met with the Bank of Japan, FSA, and everybody over the course of a few years, again and again, like multiple visits, and nothing seems to move. But with Metaplanet's dominance in the Japanese market, it just becomes unignorable. Like, how can you ignore something that size and growing at that rate and dominating volume and volatility? You can't. So the conversations have actually softened, and it's actually getting easier and easier to have these discussions. But again, you're fighting a bureaucracy. So you have to contend with that. But definitely, as you see more corporate adoption, I think you're going to see more nation state adoption. It just paves the way.
Yeah, I think they kind of go hand in hand. One doing it kind of validates it a little bit to the other. If all these big companies are doing it, I've got to imagine it becomes a lot more palatable for sovereign nations, to be like, oh, maybe we should consider this too. That's kind of, I think, what we thought when Tesla put it on their balance sheets back in, it was like 2021. I was like, oh my gosh, this is the moment. Turns out that wasn't quite the case, but it was another building block to get us where we are today in this process of so-called hyper-Bitcoinization. And you've talked about it, and we talked about it a little bit earlier. Do you really think that's something that's going to happen gradually, and then suddenly, like, we'll get some kind of black swan type of event that's going to cause it to happen overnight? Or will it likely play out in uneven increments over like a 10-year period, and then 10 years from now, I'm buying my Starbucks with Bitcoin? Like, how do you really see that playing out in the next 5 to 10?
I think it is very sudden. And that's the thesis of the Omega candle, that we just start seeing 100K candles daily. And I don't think it's far away. And I would say this is more of an orange swan than a black swan. But all signs point to the orange swan coming. It's like flying closer and closer, and it's about to land. And when it does, you're going to feel it.
Oh my God, Samson, you just dropped the amazing Game of Thrones line I never knew I needed. Orange swan cometh. I love it. That is fun. All right, so we got to wrap things up for you, Samson. I know you got to get out of here. Before we do, though, you have predicted $1 million of Bitcoin. I've heard it many a times. Realistically, by the end of this year, are we going to be seeing that $1 million Bitcoin? Or what do you think? What is your prediction for the end of this year? If you had to, this is not financial advice. I'm just curious as a man with his ear to the ground and knows what's going on. What do you think we sit at by the end of 2025?
It's hard to say. All I'm going to say is Omega is coming. I think you're just going to see it happen, and it's going to happen faster than most people believe. It feels like the general consensus is volatility is muted. We're going to see a steady slog upwards, but Bitcoin just likes to shock and awe us. So I think, if anything, we're going to see 1 million faster than anyone thinks it's going to happen. Like most models, Sailor's 24 model, Bitcoin 24 model, I think puts it out in 2030 something. He recently said in Prague in his presentation 21 million in 21 years. And, that means we're going up, a million a year, right? So
Yeah.
it's to be seen, but I think all signs point to sooner rather than later. So it's better to be prepared mentally that, it is coming and treat your Bitcoin with that care and attention and secure it and plan accordingly.
I agree, and I'll tell you this, if it hits 1 million this year, you better prepare for me to pick you up in one of my brand new helicopters, because that's what's happening if we reach 1 million by the end of December. All right, Samson, before we let you go, I'm sure there's a lot of people in our audience that are looking to learn more about you and all the amazing stuff you're doing over at Jan3. What would be the best place for me to send them to get more info?
We're on X, Jan3Com. Aqua's at Aqua Wallet, or no, sorry, Aqua Bitcoin. And my handle is Excelion, Excelllion. But the best way to reach out is actually the contact form on Jan3 because there's like 3 or 4 people that monitor that. If you DM me, it's not going to reach me, likely.
Well, that's good to know. I'll be having the team DM you for when we get you back on next. But Samson, it's been such a pleasure to have you on the show. It's so great to hear from your insight and expertise in the space. And we thank you so much for taking the time with us today. And we would love to have you back on at some point because you were just a blast. Thank you for today.
Awesome. Thanks, Hank. Take care.
Thanks, Samson. You as well.